This is the new 2025 Porsche Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid. It has 770 horsepower and a starting price of around $230,000. This is the ultimate Panamera, one of the ultimate performance sedans on the planet. And today, I'm going to review it and show you all of its quirks and features. Today's video is sponsored by Cars and Bids, which is my online car auction website for modern enthusiast cars. So far, Cars and Bids has hosted more than 20,000 auctions of special, cool, exciting cars, like this, and this, and this, and this. So if you're looking to sell your enthusiast car, reach a wide audience at carsandbids.com. Alright, time for the quirks and features of the Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid. Starting with the quirkiest quirks, like how the car rises up to greet you when you open the door. Yes, that's right. Open the door, and you can see the car shoots up like 3 inches. The theory here is that it makes it easier to get inside. A lot of people are switching from cars like the Panamera to SUVs because it's hard to climb in and out of cars. Or so goes the thinking. So Porsche figured, let's make the car rise up like it's an SUV to make it easier to get in and out. Once you get inside and close the door, the car goes right back down to its normal ride height, courtesy of the air suspension. Another quirky quirk, how about the color? Is that purple? If you look closely, is this a purple car? Indeed it is. It's sort of a lavender color, and Porsche calls it Provence, like the region in France known for its rolling hills of lavender, now applied to a car color. But before I get too far into the quirks, let's go back and do a brief overview of the Panamera. It first came out 15 years ago, Porsche's flagship luxury sedan. It rivals an S-Class, but drives like a Porsche. Well, for the 2024 model year, the Panamera was updated, facelift, and for 2025, this model appeared, the Turbo SE Hybrid, the new flagship of the Panamera range. Which, by the way, is hilariously complicated. I'm going to try to explain it all now. You have a base model Panamera that uses a turbo V6 with about 360 horsepower. Next up is the Panamera 4e Hybrid, which uses a hybrid V6 for about 460 horsepower. Then you have the Panamera GTS, which uses a turbo V8 for 500 horsepower. Then there's the Panamera 4SE Hybrid. Yes, the 4S has more power than the GTS. That uses a hybrid V6 once again, for 535 horsepower. Then you have the Panamera Turbo E Hybrid, which has a turbo hybrid V8 that makes 650 horsepower. And then you have this, the Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid, which has a turbo hybrid V8 that makes 770 horsepower. In addition to being a turbo hybrid, this car is also a plug-in hybrid, which means it can drive on full electric power, roughly 30 miles of range, before the gasoline engine has to kick in. That's actually surprisingly environmentally friendly. A lot of your driving could be done on pure electric if you want. But if you want power, this car delivers as well, 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Incredibly fast, thanks to standard all-wheel drive. As for pricing, Panamera starts around $101,000 for the base model with no options. This starts at $228,000, and that's before you add extras like Provence. But anyway, on to our next quirk, which is the Porsche badge on this car isn't colored in the usual Porsche colors. You can see in the wheel centers it's this black and white Porsche badge. Same deal on the front. On the hood, the Porsche crest is no longer fully colored, it's monochrome. Well, Porsche calls this Turbo Night. That's the color name they've developed for this. It's sort of like Carbonite, I guess. But it's only offered on turbo models like this, and so it's Turbo Night. It sort of blacks out all the badges throughout the car, so you don't have your typical colored Porsche crest. Supposed to look stealthier and cooler. In fact, this Turbo Night color is even integrated into the trim. You can see around the windows. This is Turbo Night window trim. Even on the rear badge, it says Turbo S. That's finished in Turbo Night. In fact, you even have this Turbonite colored Porsche badge on the keyless entry fob. You can see here, you press a button to lock or unlock, and this little light bar around the Turbonite Porsche crest actually lights up to confirm that you've pressed the button. Which, I must say, is a pretty cool party trick. Another cool party trick on the outside of this car is the rear wing. It doesn't just rise up like in a lot of Porsche models. Because this is a turbo, it has a special wing that rises up and sort of folds out to make it wider and provide more downforce. But let's be honest, mostly just to look cooler. Which, frankly, well, it does. And another cool exterior touch on this car, the headlights. You can see the word Porsche is printed in Porsche script in this panel that rises from the bottom of the headlights. It is actually lit up. It's a little piece of detail on this car, but it is a pretty cool looking touch. Now, as for the rest of the exterior, like I said, the Panamera was facelifted for the 2024 model year, sort of sharpened and modernized and improved. Although it's worth noting, you can still see the same familiar Panamera outline. That's basically been the look of this car since it came out back in 2010, just changed and modernized over the years, most recently for the 2024 model. Next, we move inside the new Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid, where the first thing you'll notice is, instead of leather seats, you have this classy checkered pattern going down the seat center, and the rest of the seat is Alcantara. Now, this is an option. It's something you can specify, whether you want the checkered pattern or traditional leather. You can choose. But it certainly classes up the interior of this car to have this sort of old-school, gentlemanly checkered color. Getting inside this car, you'll also notice the center badge on the steering wheel is again finished in Turbonite, instead of the usual colored Porsche logo, which is a distinctive touch for the turbo. Now, a new feature for all Panamera models, you still start this car by turning it on to the left of the steering wheel, but it's no longer a switchy twist, like in previous Panameras. Instead, there's a button you press that says, Start/Stop. You press that, and it turns on the car. To the horror of purists, I'm sure, who want an old-school twist starter to mimic the famous Le Mans start, which is how Porsches got the ignition on the left in the first place. And speaking of unusual controls, this car certainly has a few of those. Another one is the gear selector, which is not located in the middle of the rather wide center console, but instead, it's up here, between the gauge cluster screen and the center screen. This little tiny shift lever, you can push up for reverse, down for drive, neutrals in the middle, and P for park is a button on top. An unusual shift lever that's borrowed from the 911, and it's certainly a little unorthodox. Another unorthodox control in this car, adjusting the position of the climate vents. In basically every car, you just move a little switch on the vents themselves to position the airflow exactly where you want. Well, not in the Panamera. Instead, you go into the center infotainment screen, you go into the climate menu, and from here, you can adjust the exact positioning of the air vents. So you're driving along, you think the air could be blowing on you a little more. Instead of moving the switch, you actually have to go into several different menu screens and adjust the precise position of the climate control. It's unusual, but it's what they've done. Now, this car also has some rather cool controls, and my favorite is probably the adjustments in the center console. When the car is off, you can see no adjustments are visible. No buttons, no switches in the center console. But the moment you turn the car on, suddenly everything lights up and you can see what it all does. You tap down on this black panel to turn on, for example, your heated seats or your air conditioning. You adjust the airflow, the temperature, etc., on this sort of stealthy looking black panel. Surely it will get gunked up with fingerprints, but in its ungunked state, it looks pretty cool. Now, another interesting control in this car, hanging off the steering wheel, you have a little dial that's marked Drive Mode. Of course, as you twist the outside rim of that dial, it adjusts the drive mode, precisely as you'd expect. But the cool part is, in the center there is a button. That's not just the center of the wheel. That button can be pressed, and it activates this car's sport response, which basically gives you a hit of extra horsepower for a limited, temporary amount of time. So if you're on the freeway and you're trying to pass somebody, you floor it, and that's just not enough. Press your center button in the drive mode dial. Sport response turns on, and you get a little hit of extra power. which is cool. And speaking of performance, this car is equipped with the Sport Chrono package, which includes a clock on the top of the dashboard for lap timing. But if you're not using the clock for lap timing, its default position is kind of strange. There's a very small digital clock readout within the clock, but then the large, giant movement you mostly see is the second hand moving around, as if you cared about that. The actual time? Very small. But the second that it is within the time? Very large. Who knows why not? That you'll be looking at that very much for the clock, because this car is full of screens that tell you everything, of course, including the time. The center screen, the main infotainment screen, really is quite large and quite responsive, very easy to use, with apps right on the main screen, and of course Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's a very simple and very controlling screen. You can adjust all sorts of different things in here. In fact, you can even adjust the front passenger seat. You tap on seating and click passenger seat, and then the controls for the driver's seat will temporarily adjust the passenger seat until you go off that screen in the infotainment system, which is certainly unusual. And speaking of the passenger seat, it has a screen of its own, mounted directly next to the center console screen. There is a passenger seat screen on the dashboard that the passenger can use to make adjustments. Now, interestingly, the functionality of the passenger screen is basically identical to the functionality of the main center infotainment screen. So if the passenger wants to add a navigation destination or change the radio, they can do that in their own screen, which is about 6 inches closer than just doing it in the main center screen. I'm not exactly sure why the need for 2 screens, but it's what we've got. However, the best screen in this car, in the front, is undoubtedly the gauge cluster screen, which is fantastically configurable to show a wide range of different information. As you can see here, you can adjust the dial on the right to show you different pieces of info that you might want to see while you're driving along. You can just kind of scroll through different things, including navigation, radio, etc. Or you can change which dial you're adjusting to show different information, from all the dials, the center, or the left dial as well. And that's pretty cool. And the central dial even allows you to change the overall makeup of the screen. If you want the map to be larger, for example, you can do that. Or if you want to minimize the map, you can do that too. You can adjust it however you want. But the coolest part of the screen controls here is that it treats the heads-up display as essentially one more portion of this screen. So if you want to adjust what the heads-up display is showing, project it onto the windshield, you can easily do that with a simple tap of a button and then a scroll on the steering wheel, just like your other gauge cluster screen items. Usually, heads-up displays require going into menus to figure out, but here, it's very easy to configure what's being shown on the heads-up display, and that's pretty cool to see. Then, next step up, we move on to the back seat of the new Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid, where you have 2 options. You can select 2 rear bucket seats, individual seats, or a 3-person rear bench seat. Amazingly, despite its appearance, this car has the 3-person bench seat, which is hard to believe when you look back here, since the 2 outer seats appear to be buckets. They even have individual bolstering, and because there's absolutely no legroom at all for the center seat, you can see there's nowhere for the center passenger to put their legs. It makes no sense. But this center seat does have a seat belt and a headrest, and if you have someone with you who is legless or who won't complain, you can put them in the center seat, I guess, for short trips. Now, a couple of things worth noting back here. For one, the reason that this center passenger doesn't have any legroom is because there is a full complement of climate controls back here, including heated seats and climate vents, to really enhance the comfort of your rear seat passengers. And speaking of that comfort, you will also notice pillows on the headrests. Porsche branded pillows, no less, which further add to your luxury experience in the back of the Turbo SE Hybrid. Also worth pointing out in the back seat, if you don't have anyone sitting in the middle seat, and you won't, you can fold down the backrest of the middle seat and reveal cup holders for rear passengers, which is nice. And you can individually fold down just the middle part of the back seat if you have some longer item that you want to pass through from the cargo area. You can do that back here, and then you can stick it in, which is a pretty nice feature. especially since you can do it while you're sitting in the back seat. Also, one other interesting point with this new Panamera: the doors. They stay put in basically any position you want to leave them. A lot of cars, the doors when you open them only have like 2 or 3 points of opening. These stay put, and stay tightly put, exactly where you place them. You can see there's actually a hydraulic within the door. Not just a hinge, but a hydraulic that keeps the door kind of tightly placed exactly where you put it. And the theory is that maybe it won't close on your legs or your shins when you're parked on an incline and you're trying to get into the car. That's over-engineering, but it's a cool idea that again adds to your comfort and convenience in this car. And finally, we move on to the cargo area in the new Panamera. I say cargo area, and not trunk, because, well, the Panamera doesn't actually have a trunk, it's a hatchback. You open up a tailgate back here instead of a trunk, and you access a cargo area that's open to the rest of the car. This has always intrigued me, because people treat the Panamera like a luxury sedan, and they call it a luxury sedan, but really, it's a hatchback. Porsche has built a secret luxury hatchback, and that adds to the practicality of this car. Now, when you get into the cargo area, you can see it's pretty deep back here for larger items, but it's not especially wide. In fact, I'm not sure why the Panamera doesn't utilize this space on the driver's side of the cargo area, but it doesn't. It makes it a little bit narrow back here. But the benefit of the Panamera over other luxury sedans is that you can fold down the rear seats and really have a large cargo area situation that goes into the rear compartment. Almost like a luxury pickup truck with an enclosed back and 770 horsepower. Now, at this point, I must also announce some sad news. The station wagon version of the Panamera is no longer available. It was called the Panamera Sport Turismo, and Porsche sold it up to the 23 model year. But when the Panamera was facelifted for 24, the slow-selling Sport Turismo went away, and so we only have the regular Panamera left. But still, it's fairly practical thanks to this tailgate cargo area situation in lieu of a traditional trunk. Alright, driving the new Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid, which is a ridiculous name for the top-of-the-line car in the confusing Panamera lineup. But confusing though it is, and stupid though the name is, this car absolutely delivers in an unbelievable way. The thing about the Panamera that has always been amazing, ever since the very first one came out 15 years ago, the thing about the Panamera is that it combines so many great things into one. And driving this car, I'm struck by just how true that really is. Okay, amazing acceleration, supercar acceleration. 0 to 60, they say 2.8 seconds. Feels like it. It's incredibly fast. I mean just like Mondo aggressively crazy fast. Head goes, eyes go back in the head, and you feel like you're being sucked into a vortex, fast. It really is that quick. But unlike a lot of crazy sports cars that are that fast, like my Carrera GT, you don't feel it that much. You don't hear it that much, because this car is also a nice luxury car. It is surprisingly composed. It is very quiet in here, even at full throttle. This is not the car to buy if you want to hear like a big old exhaust note when you go fast. The other really amazing thing about this car is just how well it handles. It is unbelievably quick and nimble on its feet. And I say, unbelievably, particularly because this car is big. In fact, it's huge. It weighs a lot. It is physically large. You look at it, and it takes up a lot of space. Like it is a big car. But when you are throwing it around corners, it does not feel like that. The suspension is fantastic. The chassis is fantastic. It stays flat. The steering is a little bit slower than I might expect for a true sports car. But then you remind yourself, this isn't a true sports car. This is a Panamera. This is a luxury, kind of hatchback wagon situation. And so what you have in the end is an unbelievably fast accelerating car. You have basically sports car steering and handling, which is also fantastic. And you then have kind of a luxury car experience. Now I will say, because the car handles so well, the suspension has to be tighter than you might want for a luxury car. If you want a true supple, bumps just float away kind of feel, there's the Lexus LS, there's the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. This car is on the sportier side of luxury. So I would stop short of saying they really solve every problem, because it does still feel harsher than most like supple, completely comfortable and calm luxury sedans. But given its other benefits, it's quite impressive. I would say it feels like it's getting close to the level of a Lexus LS or an S-Class in terms of ride quality. And of course, it blows those cars completely out of the water in terms of performance. And so to be able to combine all of that in one car is amazing, and it's almost unique to the Panamera. It's really incredible how it can do all these things at once, how it can feel so athletic and so fast, and yet so quiet and high-tech and comfortable and roomy in here. It really does do an amazing job of doing a lot of different things in a way that, like, you wouldn't think that it should be able to in terms of physics. Now, a few other things worth noting about this car. For one, the transmission, incredibly quick. Porsche's dual clutch is among the very best. It always has been. And in this car, shifts are basically imperceptible. It's quite nice. But generally speaking, other than a few little gripes here and there, a couple of little materials that I don't love, some extra complications like the center climate vent. I mean, there's some little things that maybe I would change if I could. Other than the little stuff though, this car just is incredible in terms of its capability of being an all-around performer. Luxury car, high-tech car, surprisingly practical car. It really has it all. Until you get to the main drawback, which is the price point. It has it all, because in order to combine all that stuff into one vehicle, you're spending as much as a luxury car and a performance car and a high-tech car. And doing all that together, it really does end up making for a pretty expensive vehicle. And this is exactly that. So you get it all. You have the best of all worlds. You compromise on practically nothing, except a little bit of harshness and luxury and comfort ride quality, just a little bit. But the drawback is, you are paying all the money in order to have that experience. And most people won't find it worth it. And for the few that do, they're lucky, cause this is a great vehicle. And so, that's the new 2025 Porsche Panamera Turbo SE Hybrid. This car really has it all: amazing performance, acceleration, luxury, technology, and practicality. But it's also wildly, laughably expensive. This really is King Panamera. Score. And the Doug score is here, 71 out of 100, which puts the Panamera in a good spot against some great company. This car has a lot of benefits, namely, amazing acceleration, shockingly good handling considering its size, decent practicality, and good equipment. Its drawbacks are a massive price tag, and styling that's still polarizing, even though it's far more attractive than it was when it first came out. Still, the Panamera is a great choice if you're looking for a car like this, though I think I personally would pick the new AMG S63, which trades just a little acceleration for more equipment, nicer ride quality, and better styling.